All right, welcome to football today, July 2nd, 2024. Hope you guys are getting ready for your 4th of July. No Chris Rose today. He's
Well, no,
taking the
I'm
whole
right
week
here.
off.
No, I'm right here. Don't do that. No Penik today. No Penik
It's
today.
no Penik today. He decided that his grandma's wake was more important than
Oh my
this.
God.
Oh,
What is the matter with you?
oof.
We have a guest on today. We have of SNY, PFF, does Mets stuff, does Jets stuff, Connor Rodgers. So thank you. But this is probably the worst time to have an episode on because we got to address, Mikey with his Slim Shady haircut in the
All
background.
right, guys, take it easy.
Oh,
Take it easy.
What motivated you to
My
do
man
this?
went on a tour this week, and I decided to change it up. I always like to look memorable when I'm on the road.
so did you think
I
that
like
people
it.
couldn't see you? Is that what it was?
I don't know. I'm pretty slim, so I thought I had to add some flair to it.
Yeah, all right. That's nice.
You're wearing a white tee too. Like
The
you're
whole
really
time
just
I did it,
embracing.
my girlfriend helped me, and I was just blasting Slim Shady LP the whole time.
That's
Oh,
nice.
she helped you? She didn't try and stop you?
No, no, I had to convince her.
Uh,
All right, we've got a guest here. If you two want to have a conversation, you can call each other after this is done.
I will, trust me.
Yeah, Connor's wearing he wins the hair contest here. So welcome. Thank you for joining us. Excellent intro, Bobby, no question. You do have Jets green on today, and Aaron Rodgers has been a huge topic of conversation. And we asked this question a few weeks ago when it came out that he did not show up to mandatory minicamp, that he had someplace else that was very important to him. Is this just a media story, or do you think when he finally shows up that this is going to be a big deal?
I feel like it could be two things, right, guys? It's the fact that does it matter that he missed two practices, that time of year? It doesn't. I mean, he was at every other practice the entire spring, and they were having full practices as much as you can during the OTA period. I mean, all the guys were there. Rodgers was healthy and throwing. But why I say it could be both things is one, it did create a headline. I don't think Robert Saleh did a great job at the podium, honestly, breaking this down. He really opened the door for it to turn into something it didn't have to turn into. And from a football, perspective, it doesn't matter at all right now. Where it opens the door is if the Jets don't have the start to the season that they are expecting to have, people will look back to that and just talk about any, sliver of a distraction or it not always being all about football, especially when the political aspects came into play for Rodgers kind of during a tumultuous spring. So from a football standard, like it doesn't mean anything, right? This is a team that I think they're going to be ready to roll as soon as they get into camp, but it did open the door for especially the New York media. It's Aaron Rodgers, the national media, to put a spotlight on the team that, let's be real, guys, nobody wants to spotlight on them that time of year.
What is your confidence level in them as a whole? Like, barring again another Aaron Rodgers
Right.
play number two injury, because they've been able to keep that defense consistently good, right? Like they haven't had a down year and all of that. And the schedule is pretty easy. Like, do you have confidence level in them, or you just kind of think it might be same old Jets? Like, where are you at with
Right.
that?
I do. And I know a lot of Jets fans don't even want to hear it because you just want to see it, right? Last year, how excited was everybody all summer? And then 4 plays in, you just take the gut punch. But I'll say this, while they're a team that can be high variance because they have a 40-year-old quarterback that just missed an entire season, they're a little better prepared for it this year than they were last year. And the defense, I mean, you nailed it, Bobby. This defense is loaded. People are almost afraid to say it because it's the Jets, and I understand that. But what Jeff Ulbrich and Robert Saleh have done to build this defense over the years, I mean, they have a great corner trio in Sauce Gardner, DJ Reed, and Michael Carter in the slot. They have a loaded defensive line. They're going to figure it out with Hassan Reddick. I wouldn't worry too much about that. With Reddick, Jermaine Johnson, I think Will McDonald's going to have a better year too. Quinnen Williams, we know what he can do on the interior. The linebacker duo between CJ Mosley and Quincy Williams, who turned into a waiver wire scrap player into an all-pro player. I mean, it's a loaded defense, and there could be too deep at times in terms of their depth. So that gives them a certain floor. And then you look at Tyrod Taylor being the backup quarterback this year if Rodgers gets hurt again. And guess what? 40-year-old quarterbacks, they get hurt again. That's where you have a little bit more confidence with the rebuilt offensive line. My biggest question with this team is if Rodgers gets hurt again, is Nathaniel Hackett adequate where he could survive without Aaron Rodgers? Because we saw nothing from him last year that gave you that kind of optimism. And I understand it was Zach Wilson, it was Tim Boyle, it was Trevor Siemian. It's really hard to make any kind of meal out of that situation at quarterback. But Hackett's a guy that has had struggles other places as well, seemed a little in over his head at multiple times. They didn't bring in somebody to kind of work over the top of him this offseason, although there was a lot of rumors they were looking at those options. So that's where my concerns lie with the team. But they should be not only for a playoff spot, they should be competing for this division, as it feels like the Bills didn't make a ton of moves that make them that much better. They lost some players. The Dolphins are, kind of right where they were. And then the Patriots are in rebuild mode.
The difference is, in my opinion, with Buffalo and New York is that one has been able to deal with whatever noise there is, and there's usually not a ton in Buffalo, New York. In the Meadowlands, there's always a ton of noise, whether the Jets are good or not. But especially when we know that the GM and the head coach are right now hanging on by a string, an owner's string that he could cut at any time, that Aaron Rodgers, it feels like it's been a couple of years since he's been Aaron Rodgers. And he is going to, I said it, when he shows up, he's going to turn this on everybody else. And his explanation is going to be, well, I was somewhere where it was important to me and it's not important to you. Or he's going to tell us exactly where he was because he wants everybody to be talking about where he was, good or bad. And I think how they deal with the noise is a big part of this.
I think so. And I think it's something Robert Saleh needs to be better at going into this year. Like, there's no way around it. And I've defended Saleh a lot because there's been a lot of decisions that he wasn't a part of that the front office failed him on. And he's also had his shortcomings as well. And you just it felt like with Saleh this spring, there was a lot of times where he didn't want to make Rodgers bigger than the team because they felt like for the last year when they brought in Randall Cobb and it failed. They brought in Billy Turner and it failed. They brought in a lot of Rodgers guys. The Allen Lazard contract was a disaster. They brought in Rodgers guys and it all failed. That Saleh kind of wanted to take his team back. But the reality with this franchise is Robert Saleh is not a top 3 most powerful person with this organization. It's Woody Johnson, it's Aaron Rodgers, and then it's Joe Douglas in that order. And I think that's why you've seen a different Saleh at the podium. And I think there's times where you have to respect that. And there's times where you look at it and go, this feels like a little bit of a powder keg. So the bottom line is with the Jets, and this is always the case with the Jets, that they need to keep in mind that they somehow lose sight of all the time. Winning cures everything. If the Jets win this year, nobody is going to care really what Rodgers is talking about, what's going on with the rest of the team, what injuries they have. But the problem is when the circus has rolled in, the losses have rolled in with it at times. And that's something that they can't overcome. So it's so simple, right, guys? But the Jets have to win this year. And if they don't, the Jets will be looking a lot different top to bottom in the near future.
Yeah, we just did some of our head coach rankings, and your biggest worry with them outside of just a Aaron Rodgers out for the season injury is keeping Nathaniel Hackett, right? That is purely like you said, a Rodgers type of move. If there was anyone else at quarterback, they probably would have moved off of him last year, or probably would have kept LaFleur the year before even. And that to me is like, you saw Tyrod Taylor at his best last year with the Giants and Brian Dable. You kind of saw an outlier year with him with like the producing of the big plays and stuff outside of his health and stuff. What does it look like in a Nathaniel Hackett offense where you're going to see some of those shortcomings of Tyrod show up?
Right. That's what's so interesting is that you've built this around a great quarterback, but a 40-year-old. And then when it all fell apart in this first series, Zach Wilson wasn't comfortable in executing anything that they had built with Rodgers and Hackett. And listen, once again, like a lot of people will be like, well, Zach Wilson has been terrible. And nobody's saying he hasn't been. But that's a bad process, right? And it's a process that a lot of people, including myself, questioned last summer. You're going into the season, one Rodgers hit away from Zach Wilson playing pivotal snaps for you. They obviously knew he wasn't comfortable in what they were trying to build with Rodgers. So is Tyrod going to be comfortable with that? Is it good enough? What Hackett builds that is out of the structure of just Rodgers being a great quarterback, right? And there's moments even last year. This team somehow won 7 games last year. There was moments last year where Garrett Wilson and Breece Hall could bail them out of really not having structure in the offense because they could just make incredible plays. But that's not sustainable at the NFL level.
All right. Can we move on to the noise capital of the world, the Dallas Cowboys? I really believe, having covered the NFL as long as I have, there are days where we just talk about the Dallas Cowboys because they're the Dallas Cowboys. But I think we really need to dive into this one because I think they have fucked up the Dak Prescott situation to the point where it might affect them on the field. Am I off base or am I on track?
I think you're right on track. I don't know why they mess around with Dak negotiations. Like, this isn't the first rodeo,
Nope.
right? This is not the first rodeo. It seems like, and it's Jerry Jones, but even the comments about Dak at times, I mean, Dak has been a good quarterback in this league, and it feels like he has really established himself even for the consistencies. I know people look at the playoffs. That team has bigger problems than Dak Prescott when it comes down to that. There's a lot of questions with this team. The long term of Dak, the short term of CD Lamb, what the offensive line is going to look like this year. I mean, Tyron Smith, yes, he missed time every year, but when Tyron Smith suited up and played left tackle for them, you knew you were in a great place on that offensive line, right? The old, hey, we don't care about running backs. We'll see what we just do with our backfield this year. Everybody loves that strategy until you look around and go, wow, we have no difference maker at running back. Like, it's funny to me how people treat the position where it always swings too far one way, the pendulum. And then, I mean, Micah Parsons puts expectations on himself like I've never seen. And he's fun and everybody loves listening to him. But man, it's not very fun if you lose some games real quick when you have that kind of spotlight on you. So the long term of Dak, the Cowboys always seem like they want more, they want better. And then when it comes full circle, they're like, well, there's really no path for us to improve and upgrade over Dak. So this is what we have to do. Does that come to a head after this year? I mean, I don't want to get ahead of myself, but it just feels like it is going that direction.
I wonder how much of it is from Dak's side, though, right? Because obviously, if you do get to open free agents, and he can't be franchise tagged either, which I think is a big part of this. Like, you do cash in more, right? Taking that chance. And I do think, like, with Dak, because it's frustrating. We talked about this on like a look at next year's free agency, where it's like, man, it's so good. And then I do think you do have to start judging him partly on the playoffs, right? Not on whether he's a good quarterback or not, but when you're comparing him to those other good quarterbacks, and then like you said, how much is that Dallas? How much is that him? I want to pivot to the draft because that's where you're more known now nationally. You and Trevor Sycamore over with PFF. What team's draft class do you see having like an immediate impact the way the Lions or the Rams did last year?
It's a really good question because there's been quite a few of them, it felt like this year. I felt like the Steelers did a lot of really, really good things, and they had to, right? They were a team that you looked at it and you just went, man, they got needs on the offensive line. They have some needs on the defense that they want to address. They go get Troy Fautanu, who to me was a top 15 player and kind of had some of that swingman across the offensive line that you love. You love the reps at tackle, but you've seen him at guard. He's athletic enough to play center. And then they go get a center in Zach Frazier in the next round, a guy that, you just love the pedigree, the background, the 4-time state champion wrestler, 3 to 4 year starter at West Virginia, really, really tough Iron Man. And then you get a starting wide receiver in Roman Wilson, somebody that can kind of plug in across from George Pickens and give you a little bit of speed for a team that they have a weird quarterback situation, right? Like, what does Russ have left in the tank? What are they going to get from Justin Fields when, the hourglass kind of empties out on Russ at some point this year and Fields has to play? There's a lot of questions around that and a lot of questions around the offense. And then, you look at another one to me, and I'm not just saying this to you, Bobby. I liked it when we did all the grades. Like, the Giants are a team to me that they were just starving for a playmaker, and they were starving for somebody that they could funnel the offense through for Dable. And you look at Malik Neighbors. We kind of got lost in this until about 2 weeks before the draft. The gap between Marvin Harrison Jr. and Malik Neighbors was, I won't say non-existent, but I wouldn't even call it a gap. And then people kind of looked around and said, man, like Malik Neighbors could be the first wide receiver taken. And he wasn't, but he's someone to me that I saw plus 1,800 as offensive rookie of the year. And I was like, that's wild to me. I mean, this is someone that walks in tailor-made for 1 million targets in the offense. He doesn't need great quarterback play to function off of his targets. LSU used them at all 3 levels of the field. They would scheme him the ball open and then they throw it over the top of you. And even getting Tyler Nubin, after you lose Xavier McKinney at safety, Nubin was asked to play every single role in that Minnesota offense. I thought he could have declared over a year ago and been a starter in the NFL. He stayed at school. Interesting decision. Didn't really cost him that much because he still went in the top 50, but he could play single high. He could play 2 deep. You could put him down in the box to make plays as well. So you look at the Steelers and the Giants, it felt like in the first 2 rounds, they got plug and play starters, but also actual impact starters, not guys that you just forget about, but you're actually hearing their name called quite a bit.
Yeah, with Neighbors, I'm excited to see the domino effect that it has, right? Like independent of the quarterback situation, but like Darius Slayton has led the team in receiving 4 of the last 5 years.
Yeah.
And he's been a good player. He's like someone that I've always kind of like when they were thinking about cutting him, I was like, this is insane if you're going to cut this guy with the current wide receiver group. he finally gets like that wide receiver to treatment from defenses, allowing, now that they have the speed, I don't think Daniel Jones is going to be someone who's going to take advantage most times, but like Hyatt, like who are you going to bracket when you have Hyatt on one side and Neighbors on the other side? Hyatt's obviously need a lot of development, but he has proven like that Tennessee speed is real. He can just flat out run past guys. And then Wandale, be interesting to see how they use the tight end room with Theo Johnson and Bellinger. But I'm excited to see the domino effect that Neighbors has on the entire offense.
I agree with that. And we had Hyde on for fantasy football happy hour at Super Bowl. And one of the things he beamed about right away is he was just, he was kind of like, I just can't wait to maybe play the slot a little bit again, because he had so much success in the slot at the college level, especially when hands are off him. He's a lighter guy. You can kind of give him a little bit more of a runway to build up that speed down the field, where you look at it and go, okay, maybe the pieces of this offense fit a little bit better together now with Darren Waller. It's weird to say out of the way, but he was a guy that's going to clog the slot a lot. And there was just a lot of mystery around if he's going to be a part of this team, and they got that answer. So there is a trickle effect there with Neighbors across the board to the other two wide receivers that actually bring a speed element to the offense.
I'm looking forward to the time where Malik Neighbors motherfucks Daniel Jones when he's one hopping balls, from 8 yards away. That's what I'm looking forward to.
That's Daniel Jones' specialty is the 8-yard pass.
I know, man. He's like throwing Chris Paul bounce passes. He's just awesome. It's
really, or we get
good.
Drew Lock out there. Just Drew Lock will truly say fuck it. Like
that's what I'm so. That's what, because I know you had to watch Tyrod Taylor, and again, you saw an outlier year with him pushing the ball down the field. He's been one of the most conservative quarterbacks in entire his career. Is 2022? They really built the offense around Daniel Jones and the rest of the group they had. Will Dable stick to his, like, you know what? This is what I want to do. I create explosives. That's what I do as an offensive play caller. And if DJ's not going to do that, I will put Locke in, who's probably a worse quarterback. But if there's one thing he's going to do, he's going to at least try to make those difficult throws. So it'll be interesting to see how they envision that offense going into the year.
You would think with the guaranteed money out, there's a quicker hook for Jones this year. And once again, like you don't want to just run over Jones and assume that it's going to happen, but it feels like the hook will be quicker when there's no guarantees for the following year.
Guys, we're talking about Drew Lock, though. I mean, come on, please. I'm sorry. I have to.
It's a weird place to be.
It is.
The quarterbacks I've talked about for a long time.
That's true.
Bryce Petty, Christian Hackenberg. Yes. It can get darker.
So let's lighten it up, since the draft is your specialty. You can only choose one of two ways. That Caleb Williams will do exactly what C.J. Stroud did for the Houston Texans and get them to the playoffs, or Caleb Williams will not get the Bears to the playoffs in year one.
Wow, I would go with the latter, because I think Stroud's rookie season was out of this world, and what he had. It's so interesting when you watch that team, right? Bobby Slowick, we had like different perceptions of Stroud. Bobby Slowick would come out each week and be like, let's run the ball and be really protective of our young quarterback. Then the Texans would be in a hole and they'd be like, well, we have to throw now. And Stroud would find a way and just absolutely light it up. When you look at the Bears, I just don't think they're going to put that pressure on Caleb Williams. They have built up a defense that really looked good after the Montez Sweat trade. They have paid a running back. They have drafted running backs. Yes, they have a deep wide receiver and tight end core, but I think they really want to be let's protect our young signal caller. They are. And
it drives me nuts, though. It drives me nuts because it's there for the taking.
Right. And I know. And you look at that division. I mean, yes, the Lions are good, but they're not that far away, the Bears. They're really not. They feel really, really close. Another draft that I loved, and they didn't have to do that much for anyone to love it, right? You got Caleb Williams. You take Rome Odunze. I actually liked some of the day 3 picks they had. So I just think, and that makes you go back to the question, like, was keeping Eberflus the right move? And we're going to see that really, really early on this year.
Wait, what do you think?
I would have wiped the slate clean. And he did a great job with the defense, but that's not what's going to propel the franchise forward. I'm sorry. I don't think it is.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see with them adding Shane Waldron at OC compared to Luke Getsy, who I wasn't a big fan. Again, I think a lot of their issues were Fields, but they also just kind of threw Fields like, well, you're not good at this. Well, we're gonna keep running this type of stuff.
Yeah. There's an upgrade there. Waldron's better, and Waldron sometimes had handcuffs on him from Pete Carroll. Where like the Waldron that came out of the McVay tree, there was more to me, more meat on the bone. And Pete's just in your ear for better or for worse, like, hey, we got to be more conservative in the offense. That's just how Pete Carroll's going to be. So I'm curious to see Waldron, with his full fingerprints in a place.
This is a different type of question, but since we're talking about because Caleb Williams didn't go to the worst team in the NFL, right? Because of that Panthers trade. Would you like an NFL draft lottery?
Oh, man. I don't think so. And maybe I'm just a traditionalist. But there is something to it, right? There is definitely, it's another event that the league would love.
It would do more numbers than the conference championship games.
Yes. The eyeballs on it. And I'm a guy that does an NFL draft podcast. So it's another talking point. It's great for all of us. I guess from a content perspective, which is an evil thing to say in this world, I would love it. But from an actual football standard, it feels like it opens the door for, I'm a big NHL fan. I really am. And I've just seen too many teams get hosed I'm a Rangers fan. They got blessed by the lottery multiple times. And there's just some variance with it that it doesn't, I don't know, it doesn't serve its purpose. It would have to be crafted really the right way.
See, I love it.
Odds.
I'm a traditionalist and I love it.
Yeah, I love it too. I'd never thought about it until you just brought it up. It's the only one of the 4 sports that does not have it, because my Cleveland Guardians, who could end up having the best record in the American League when they pick first in a few weeks at the All-Star break. That is bizarre.
Right.
That is bizarre.
It's crazy. I mean, the year the Rangers got the number 1 pick in the draft, they were in the playoffs. It was just a weird year. So the NFL could definitely do it the right way. And people could say what they want. Tanking's a real thing. Okay. So if you want to truly nip that, that's your way around it.
It's harder to tank in the NFL than any other team. So you rarely ever see it. Like you said, you would totally get rid of it. I would love it. Like you said,
it's a great event.
Think about covering quarterbacks, right? Let's think about how, from the content point of view, your quarterback episode, do something on Caleb Williams. You just had 10 other fan bases just are locked into this.
It's a great point.
With the prayer that is theirs. So I'm all for it. And then all the other thing is I hate seeing the first overall pick going to the worst situation, right? Especially with quarterbacks get the hook a little quicker than they used to when they got the big contracts. I would like teams to be better set up for that. I also wanted Drake May this year, and I did a little fill in the blanks tankathon. I'm we would have got Drake May if I did this the first time.
I've done that my whole life with the Jets. I feel we were screaming when the punter makes a tackle that cost them Trevor Lawrence. That's just how it goes.
I'm pitching it to
lottery. It changes if there's lottery.
My my audience is Knicks fans, so I know whenever I pitch it, I'm pitching it to the worst possible people to pitch
I'm a Knicks
it to.
Fan too. You're warming me up to it. You really are. You kind of talked me into it. I'm not gonna lie.
The Knicks got away with the best lottery heist in the history of sports. I was watching that as a 14-year-old when they frickin' froze the envelope and bent the corner. And David Stern was feeling around in this big, lotto ball thing that we're spinning around. So Knicks fans, shut up, please.
Yeah, I agree with that point. Go Nets. We're speaking of first overall quarterbacks that go to horrible situations. What do you expect for Bryce Young in year 2?
Man.
They've added some pieces to help around, but it's still very questionable. I feel like he's been totally given up on a year after being picked first overall.
He really has. It's wild. I mean, that situation was awful from top to bottom. What the offense was apparently trying to do, the personnel, everything about it was bad. And you had a quarterback that couldn't just make something out of nothing. He just couldn't find a way to do that from a physical standpoint. I think they're going to be really safe this year. When you look at Canales, he'll throw the ball to the running back 80 times if he has to. That's just how they're going to be built. And that's why they drafted Jonathan Brooks, right? They're going to throw the ball to Jonathan Brooks when he's ready off of that ACL. They want to get the ball out quick to Deontay Johnson, who's a quick separator in the NFL. I think everything with that offense will just be faster this year. Doesn't mean it's going to be great, right? And it's not a great division. So that you would expect them to be competitive after all the money they've spent, all the resources they've invested. But I think they're just going to try to dummy it down so much that is this going to be a big year for Bryce? No. But can you build his confidence a little bit where people aren't laughing at him after being a number 1 pick? And the reality is with Bryce, the Stroud situation just completely hurt him, right? CJ Stroud has this historic rookie season that everybody's looking around and going, wow, Bryce Young got drafted over him. How did this happen? And it's just 2 totally different situations.
Do you think, week 2 years from now, when it comes time to pick up or decline fifth-year options, do you think it's going to work out with him?
I do. I think they'll pick it up, and I think he'll be there for a while. I just don't think he'll ever be that guy. Like, it feels like a Derek Carr-ish situation for so long, where you're looking around and you like that you have middle of the pack quarterback play for so long, and then you realize you're kind of spinning the same wheel every year, and you're like, this isn't going to get us over the hump. But I've wondered that about the Dolphins with Tua, and Tua obviously is in a totally different place than Bryce Young. But when you talk about quarterback contracts, everybody gets $55 million now, the next man up. You just wonder how long teams are patient with that. And you kind of hinted at it, Bobby, with Dak in the playoffs. I mean, Dak is a great quarterback, but at some point you got to produce in the playoffs. If I was a betting man, I'd still believe in Bryce Young with a better situation, with a better coaching staff, better personnel. It's just a matter of, is he a difference maker? Like we saw from Stroud so early, like we see from all the top guys in the league. I just don't think physically he can be that. And that has teams always going back to the drawing board, looking for bigger, faster, strong-armed guys, no matter how raw they are. And it'll bite you more often than it helps you. But when you hit on them, it's the biggest way to have success in the NFL.
That is a tough way to go. We've seen it though in recent years, because you said, Tua's going to get paid. We know that Jordan Love's going to get paid. I think you have to go back to that 2015 draft class with Jameis and Mariota, where teams were like, all right, we'll take you through the 5th year, and then we're not going to commit to you because you're not that good.
Right.
Who's the next guy that somebody's going to say that to?
Ooh, that's tough. That's like on the fence in the middle of the pack right now.
I think I think he's going to get paid, but
He's
Tua's the
prime
ultimate
example, though.
Yeah, he's the ultimate. Like, I think that's like the cut line where I'd say no.
And we had to wonder for a while, would the Lions be like that with Goff?
Mm-hmm.
Right? That was the one where, and yes, it was his second landing spot. And the Lions really liked him when they traded for him. They knew him. They felt like he could function in their offense. But I thought, covering the draft, or at least how it was sold to me, was they like Goff while they're going through a transition. And in 2 years or so, they'll have the next guy. And then Goff kind of exceeded expectations. Ben Johnson exceeded expectations. And they're like, we like Jared Goff. We feel like we were a few plays away from where we want to be with Jared Goff. We'll pay Jared Goff. So Goff was the guy before Tua to be like that. And then you kind of look around. I feel like we need a little bit more time, because we'll get there with Bryce, of course. The Steelers don't have anyone. Trevor Lawrence got paid already. It's going to be really, really interesting to see like who's next up, because obviously Herbert's paid. I mean,
what does Brock Purdy get?
He'll get paid. They'll cave to like that next man up mentality. He'll get over $50 million a year, Brock Purdy. Kyle Shanahan loves like Brock Purdy. He's everything.
I don't blame him either.
Yeah. Right. Like if you got a good thing.
Is that the most shocking thing that you've covered in terms of building up?
Far.
Yeah.
You know why? Because here's why. 4-year starter at Iowa State. I knew about Brock Purdy after his sophomore year, because that's when you start to at quarterbacks. Like other positions, there's only so much your one-man scouting army can cover. But quarterbacks, all the potential guys as the underclassmen that are entering their eligible year. Everybody that does the same job as me covering the draft knew about Brock Purdy, because he's got a big arm, decent enough athlete. He was at Iowa State where he was having some flashes. And then those next 2 years, it went downhill. Like the turnovers were inexcusable. He looked lost a lot of times. The talent was always there. And then I remember when I ranked him that year, I had him literally right like 260 or something, because it's like somewhere that player is still there where he's a draftable quarterback. And the line for being a draftable quarterback is very flexible, guys. But for him to be that efficient, like that good, that quick, is jarring. And there's nothing you could do to predict that, because every other team in the NFL didn't see that. The 49ers didn't see that. If they thought he could be a capable backup, they'd take him 3 rounds earlier. They took him with a throwaway pick in the draft, and he blew everyone's minds.
All right, let me ask you this then, from the other side of things. The 2021 class, 4 of those 5 guys taken in the top half of the first round are now on their second team before year 4. Which one has the best chance of actually becoming something in the NFL?
Wow.
Based on the way you studied things in college.
I mean, foolishly, I would actually go probably with Mac Jones in like a sustainable career, right? If we're looking for a guy that just can hang around for a really, really long time, because the floor with Fields, Zach Wilson, and Trey Lance is literally out of the league in 2 years. Like it is. There's no other way around it. Trey Lance, we didn't see the guy play football, and we didn't see him play football at college.
Right.
We had 1 year tape before the COVID year, and he had a showcase game. All of us were looking around like, well, he's got a lot of talent, and he's going to go early. He's got to be ranked pretty high. And we have not seen him play. I still love the talent of Trey Lance. If you want to talk about the ceiling of those guys, it would be Trey Lance for me. Like maybe I'm a fool for still believing that talent can be unlocked somewhere. With Fields and Zach Wilson, it just feels like they are what they are. They're turnover prone. They're injury prone. I know Fields has had a lot more success than Zach Wilson because he's got the ability with his legs and he's been a better passer, but he holds the ball forever. I mean, I don't know if Zach Wilson makes the Broncos. Like, if we want an easy one real quick, I don't even think he makes the Broncos, honestly.
You don't think he makes the team?
I think it'll be close.
He just took that picture with his girlfriend. You can't put that out there.
With the new haircut?
Team. Yeah.
Sean Payton loves himself, Jarrett Stidham. If they carry 2 quarterbacks, it's not going to be Zach Wilson. It's not. Maybe they just carry him, though, and see what happens.
By the way, I beg your pardon. I think it's fiance. I think I just got myself uninvited from the wedding.
Yeah, it probably just cost you there. And
you would be. I wouldn't be surprised if you were like, I just got back from Zach Wilson's wedding, bros.
Is that an insult or a compliment?
Yeah, I don't know which way to take it.
That's a compliment. He knows everybody.
Yeah, that's not. Well, no, not true. Not young guys like that. I'm trying to think. Probably the most famous person's wedding I went to. This is a good one. I went to Tom Arnold's 3rd wedding.
Okay,
so that's not that big a deal because I feel
What's
like
the vibe at a 3rd wedding, if you don't mind me asking?
It was interesting because she came from a political family background. It was at a beautiful place. Like Arnold Schwarzenegger was there. That was kind of cool.
That's cool.
Yeah, there were some, famous people there. There was definitely some A-listers, no question about it. So I was curious, like how many of the people from True Lies were going to show up, since that was his peak role. But I feel like the further Tom went down the wedding aisle, it's not that big a deal to be invited to one of his weddings now. Yeah. It's like everybody makes the
It's still cool.
Famous, I've never been to a famous person's wedding. Are they enjoyable, or are they just like a photo shoot where like the photos get leaked out for thousands?
No, it was very nice.
Dollars?
It was very nice. It actually was very nice, and it was at a beautiful place out here in Beverly Hills, and everything was nice. Like
were the Trailer Park Boys invited? I know he loves those guys.
No, they were not. They were not. He was very close with the Farley brothers, not the Fairley brothers, the Farley brothers. Chris Farley was a good friend of his who unfortunately passed away 30 years ago, but he was good friends with their so good Midwestern values and that stuff. That's what we do.
Chris, I don't know if you have anything else. I want to ask you this. You guys did your quarterback episode. Obviously, it doesn't look so hot for next year's draft class.
It's not. Yeah.
Right? Like even Carson Beck, we did our way too early preview last week, and I watched a couple games. I'm like, oh, this is nice. And then watching like some defensive players, I'm like, oh, here's some of the reason why it's not so nice. Is there anyone that you can see just like shooting up and becoming that top 5 pick, and it's not just forcing it because it's a down QB year?
Yeah, Connor Wegman from Texas A&M. I mean, and here's the scoop. There's a lot of expectations when he got there. He gets a start last year as a sophomore, and he had a foot injury that cost him his season about 4 games into the year. So you got the classic, we'll call it the Trey Lance. You're watching the 4 games, and you see it. Big arm, moves well. I thought makes really good decisions. Absolutely understands what the offense is trying to do. Can rip the ball into tight windows. Sees coverages. Like, it's all there. Size. And he was a big enough recruit that it's like, this is what you're kind of expecting. He got hurt, though. And I want to see him in big games. I want to see him in November SEC, kind of football where the stakes are high, because he got hurt in the Auburn game and he was kind of struggling right out of the gate out of that game. So, and it was just, there's no sample size, but you look at his performance against Miami and it's what you want in a pro quarterback prospect. So that's,
I also see why Jimbo Fisher got fired. I've never seen a team get blitzed so much and just like have no plan. I've never
can't imagine why he got hurt 4 games into the year, right?
Yeah, I was like, what was Jimbo doing? Just like, this team's
disaster.
blitzing us every down, and we just don't care. We're going 5 out every play.
Right. Yeah. So he's the guy from a talent perspective. I had him as QB4. I didn't have anyone with a 1st-round grade. Beck was the highest one. Oh. I'd have him in the 2nd round. The internet wanted to slaughter me when I said Shadur Sanders is a day 2 quarterback. I didn't know that's a hot take. we are so obsessed with name recognition at this point versus reality.
Right.
I don't know a team in the NFL that has preseason grades that are taking Shadur with a top 5 pick right now or a top 10 pick. And he could play himself into that because that's the game, right? Any of these guys can.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, look at Jaden Daniels. Nobody had Jaden Daniels in the first 3 rounds last summer, and he went second overall. So there's no one saying you can't do it. But there's last year, like Caleb Williams and Drake May were going in the top 5 last July, right? So we don't have anyone like that. I would say we don't have anyone in the top 20 right now with that kind of expectations. They got to play their way into it.
Where would you slide Beck in last year's rankings?
Oh man, it would be pretty tough for him. Let's look how I had it. So not over Caleb Williams, Drake May, Michael Penix, Jaden Daniels. I would have him right with probably McCarthy. I had McCarthy and Nix graded at the top of the second round. And obviously they go a lot earlier than that. It's quarterbacks. I would have him there. So beginning of day 2.
Nice.
And he honestly, if he declared, he had those grades. I'd heard he would have went day 2 if he declared. But I think he made a good choice going back to school.
All right, I got 2 quick questions before we let you go. One is, I imagine you do most of your college work in front of screens, right? So you probably don't go to a lot of games. Is that accurate?
I used to I used to work at Bleacher Report, and I was on the road 2018 and 2019 seasons at least every other week for college football because we did a lot of events. Since COVID, and I work at NBC now full time, where I'm in Stamford, Connecticut, our studios every single week. Right. I get to, when like Ohio State comes to Rutgers, I'll get in the car real quick for that kind of game. But hopefully with the Big Ten rights at NBC, I will get back to that schedule. But the last 4 years, I go to the Senior Bowl, and that's where I get to see a lot of these guys up close in person. That's it.
Okay, so for people that might want to pick a college venue to go to, and they're like,
answer this one.
Okay, go for it.
I mean, I'll say Baton Rouge is unbelievable. And I went there when Burrow was there, so maybe there's a little bias, but it's the people. They're so friendly and welcoming and fun, and it's a wild place and environment, whether it's during the day, whether it's at night. Madison, Wisconsin, unbelievable football town. Like just unbelievable. Walking to the game, the places you can go out, the stadium, the traditions. And then just venue where I was in awe of like you felt like you were in like a holy place is the Rose Bowl. I mean, walking through Pasadena, and I've been to the Rose Bowl, I think 2 or 3 times, and every single time it felt exactly as it doesn't matter. I went for like Arizona, UCLA or something once. I forget what the game was. It was like nothing game. And it's just it's the place. It's like, wow, this is where like football in heaven kind of is. So I think those would be. I'm trying to think if I really missed an obvious one. Those 3 are pretty head and shoulders special from where I've been.
That's good. And I know that at least in your past, are you still doing a ton of are you doing fantasy stuff or?
I'm hosting Fantasy Football Happy Hour with Matthew Berry. We start back up in August, go to December on Peacock 5 days a week. Okay,
good. So just give one word of advice as people are like in now a 2-month crunch. Like, go for it. Give us the best piece of advice you can. And I'm not talking about an individual player. I'm talking about in its entirety, whether it's prep, whether it's too much of this, not enough of that. Go for it.
I would say don't drive yourself nuts and do too many mock drafts, but do a handful to get the feel of how you want to go about building a team, because every year is so different, where you find trends of, okay, I can get 3 wide receivers from rounds 2 to 7. But this year I have to take my the quarterback cliff, assuming it's a 1 quarterback league. Do 3 to 5 mock drafts, get a feel for what kind of year it is, and understand how you want to draft. Like, are you going to bet all your chips on a hero running back in the first round? Or are you just, hey, I don't believe in that. The injuries are too high. I'm going to take the best available wide receiver. Do I have to have my quarterback by round 6? And nobody wants to go into their draft and be like, damn, it's round 11. I waited on the quarterbacks. The swing came back, and my options are Derek Carr and, Russell Wilson. Like, that's how you lose in August. So that's my biggest advice is there's a sense of doing too many mock drafts. Do a handful and get a feel for the kind of year it is and understand the people you're playing against.
That's awesome. I should have listened. I went 3-0 out of the gate last year and then did not win until the last week.
Who's in your league? I bet you that's a bunch of famous people.
It's definitely not. It's my family. That's it.
That makes it harder when you lose. Nobody wants to lose.
My brother's name is Pete Rose, so that kind of counts as famous.
There you go.
Yeah.
The worst is now, if I do like my home league, my friends I've known forever. If I do well, it's because I work in football.
Of course.
If I do bad, I'm a fraud to them, like a joke. Like I get clowned in the chat. So there's no win. Like fantasy football, your top 3 picks can get hurt by October. It doesn't matter what you know and what you don't. So that's a really fun thing about playing with your lifelong people.
Oh, yeah. Is that one of those leagues where you have to, if you finish last, you have to do something totally ridiculous?
We've tried to implement that, but now everybody doesn't live anywhere close to each other. This year, I'm going to make sure we do, because it just makes the stakes so much higher, so much better.
Dude, this was fun. We really enjoyed it. We appreciate the
guys.
time. We know that you're swamped and
it's
doing all. No, come
guys,
on,
I played 9 holes of golf this morning. I did not like this July.
And
It's not bad. Pretty solid.
Come on.
Pretty solid. It was okay. I was a little over par, but I'm not a good golfer, so it was fine.
What are you afraid? What am I going to turn this in? A little over par.
I mean, I need to literally go get the card. I'm not like a obsessive, like I'm not a good golfer. Like if somebody asked me my handicap, I wouldn't have like a conversation for them.
Oh, got it. So you probably shot in the 50s.
Yeah, that sounds about right.
Okay.
Speaking
good.
of which, speaking of golf, who are you voting for?
Oh, that's what a topic after that debate.
Very good, Bobby.
Oh my goodness.
Just trying to make people uncomfortable.
Yeah, that'll do it.
Between the Penik comment and way to close, this was pretty good.
It's a real way to put a bow on.
Yeah.
After a great open, Bobby.
I know I've said that this is the last thing I'm going to say, but this will be it. Since you also cover Mets, thumbs up or thumbs down on Oh My God?
You know what? It was thumbs up big time. If they go on a losing streak after the concert at Citi Field, I will turn heel on this so quickly. So quickly. It brought the vibes back. I'm glad they're having fun. They would never be able to do that under Buck. So it's good to see like a little bit of fun back with the team. And I give Grimace credit for saving the season, but if we want to go with Oh My God, I'm fine with that too.
Grimace is my favorite baseball gimmick in like years. Like that's truly amazing. And then accumulating Subway Series rain delay where that guy's with like a 7-foot wingspan, 20 feet in the air, looks like a cult chugging beers. That's like my favorite baseball video I've ever seen.
I mean, I was at the Tuesday game and the atmosphere in New York for baseball was out of this world. And a lot of it is the Grimace costumes.
Honestly. I'm not going to let you hop on the Grimace train. You know why? Here's my problem with it. A player did not go out and catch his first pitch. It was like somebody who had never caught a baseball before.
It was the Mets podcast, sir. He hosts the official podcast of the Mets, Vito. He caught the Grimace ball.
Barely. He barely caught it.
It really needed to be like Pete Alonso.
But even if you don't want it to
I'll
be a
even
star,
take Brandon Nimmo. Yeah,
you could go 25 or 26 down the line, but somebody who's actually going to set foot on the diamond that night has to, if you are going to embrace it, you have to be there from the beginning. They were not there, and that's going to fuck with you.
It was a throwaway. They treated it like a throwaway, and then when it worked out, they grabbed. Listen, I'm a lifelong Mets fan. We grab onto any sliver of hope. It is like, trust me, it's wild existence. You hold on to whatever the hell you have to.
All right, Alonso needs Grimace to throw to him in the home run derby this year. That would put it on another level.
That's the gimmick. And Grimace never reaches home plate, so Alonso doesn't hit any home runs and gets really pissed about it.
Goes out and kills him with a bat.
MLB marketing.
Yeah.
Hear us out.
Tommy DeVito and Grimace, the stars of New York in this past calendar year.
What a freaking world.
Coming your way tonight on WWOR. Connor, this was a blast. Hopefully we'll catch up with you at some point during the season because you're not
anytime.
Yeah, you're not busy during that time.
I'll be terrible at golf until I don't have time to play. So
we will see you later this week. I think we're going to start ranking some positional groups around the NFL because that's what we do here in early July, and hopefully Justin Penik will be back and Bobby Skinner can say something snide to him. Connor Rodgers, continued success there. Thanks for the time, buddy.
Thanks, guys.
All right. Also, shout out producer Mikey. Always does a bang-up job. We will see you next time here on Football Today.